Good morning and welcome to Navigating Complexity. This is the podcast where we engage in conversations with friends on life and the law and hope to bring a little humanity to the practice of law. I am your host, Danielle Dudai. Today on the podcast, we have a very special guest, Terra Sickler. She is a real estate attorney. She handles all matters of estate planning and probate, and I'm very excited to have her here on the show today.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Welcome to the podcast.
Excited.
So the first question I always ask is, why did you become a lawyer?
You know, I didn't think I wanted to be a lawyer. I remember where I was when I said I wasn't going to be a lawyer specifically. It was in Switzerland at a Hooters with a table full of attorneys, actually, friends from high school. Later, after I told them I'd never be an attorney, I thought about the things that I could do to help people. And I think after hearing one too many people take bad advice or not get enough opinions, I wanted to be able to help people in one way, shape, or form.
That's so interesting for so many reasons. I'm really stuck on the fact that Hooters exists over there, but everybody loves their wings. So there's that. How would you describe what you do to a non-lawyer?
To a non-lawyer, the reasonable person, right? I say dirt and death, and everybody always laughs and says, what is that? And I mean, I deal with dirt, which is real estate. You see it, and death. So estate planning, because you're planning for what? Death. Probate happens after someone dies. So dirt and death, here we are.
So tell me a little bit about what probate is, because I know that people hear that word but don't fully appreciate what that is.
Right. And I wish that more people did. Probate is a court process that is required when someone has assets in their individual name at their death. So something like a car, a lot of times, we see bank accounts, houses, things along those lines, property that somebody still has in their individual name and no other owners, or for property like a tenants in common, meaning you own a fair share with somebody, but it's not a right of survivorship or husband and wife, tenants of entirety type of situation.
What's a right of survivorship?
Two people or more own a piece of property at the same time. And the vesting language usually says with right of survivorship. So if you and I owned a piece of property together, it'd be Terra and Danielle with right of survivorship, and whoever outlived the other had the property 100% to themselves.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
But so you told me that probate is like a court process. Doesn't a will avoid all of that?
I wish. And no, it does not. Will just gives designations to who gets what and when, why even, but it's still in your individual name. And so the court has to get their hands on it. A judge has to review all the documentation, and then a court order is entered in order to disperse the property according to your will.
So even if you have a will, you still have to go to court?
That's right.
Wow, that's really interesting. What about a trust? What's a trust?
So a trust, which I try to explain to people such as my entrepreneurs and business owning friends, it's a lot like an operating agreement for your life. So Terra's assets are in a trust, which is like Terra's personal business. And then I have a operating agreement, which is the trust, that designates who the manager is, or the settlor/trustees, who the beneficiaries are, meaning who's going to get the shares after my death, and how the property should be dispersed for the best interest of the estate or the beneficiaries.
So do you still have to go to court with a trust?
Usually not.
Oh, wow. Okay. So
Usually not.
Is it kind of like a manual to your personal stuff?
Exactly.
Okay. Very
Exactly.
cool.
You only end up in court with those if there's a contest or an argument over something. Maybe a trustee isn't doing their fiduciary duties, which are obligations that a person in that position has to adhere to disperse the assets and things like that. If there's arguments, people aren't happy with how things are being handled, then it might end up in court. But that's usually bad faith arguments.
So basically there's like a trustee who's in charge of all your stuff after death that's supposed to follow this manual, right? The trust. And it sounds like that person is supposed to be a top tier individual. Do you have to know your trustee in order to make them the trustee of your stuff, or can it be a stranger?
It could be a stranger. They have corporate fiduciaries. So if you have a banker or a lot of people have, their money in investment accounts, you can appoint a corporate trustee. They'll go by the manual, also known as the trust, and disperse according to, your designations.
Okay. So in case somebody didn't have someone they trusted, they could hire someone to
You
do
could
it.
hire somebody, and
Okay.
it does come at a cost.
So what made you pick dirt and death?
Great question. Like most things in life, I think I fell into it. My family did a lot of real estate, so I already understood the real estate aspects of it. Before law school, I was actually a mortgage broker. So,
Interesting.
yes, that was interesting. And then the market crash, there were no mortgages being given by the banks, and so I went to law school. And then the probate estate planning aspect kind of was due to personal circumstances. Somebody had to handle the family business. And so I taught myself, and here we are.
Oh, wow. Okay. So that actually probably benefits your clients because you've actually been where they are worrying about, right? Like they're planning for this thing and you've actually been there.
Well, and that's another part of it too. I do know what it's like to be in those positions. And I would say, the various kinds, not just losing a loved one, but even dealing with, the arguments and the contests of whatever the will or intent of the deceased person was. So I've seen it from both sides.
Do you think the fact that you have to go to court on some of these things helps you better plan to write these operating agreements, these trusts, and maybe even the wills?
Absolutely. You have to read the case law when you're in court, and so you see where the pitfalls are. You see what mistakes drafters have made. That was part of the reason that I avoided doing estate planning at all for a while because I didn't want to be responsible. It wasn't me, oh no, because it's embarrassing if there's a word missing that completely changes the entire intent of a will. I mean,
or even a comma. It could be that simple. I mean, we've litigated over that.
You have to be very careful over the language. And that's one thing about our area of law that's just, it's part of that complexity. One of the biggest things I hear is, oh, we have a online will. I just cringe.
I feel that pain.
I cringe.
I feel that. That's what I get with people who are like, I have a legal Zoom operating agreement. And I'm like, okay, well, that's not going to do anything for you.
I pray the best for you.
Yeah. So you told us that you were a mortgage broker and then you went to law school. What was your first job out of law school?
Oh, my goodness. My first job out of law school, I was a solo associate in a small firm in Orlando. And they had me doing a lot of commercial litigation support. I did a little bit of wills and trusts there, a little bit of probate, taught myself foreclosure defense. So it was a small firm, so they kind of threw me in the deep end, and I was a first-year associate going to motions to compel discovery and defensive motions and all of these different kinds of things. So I was definitely thrown right in.
Yep. Just figure it out. You got to figure it out while you're running.
That's right.
Yep. So what were some challenges that maybe you faced in that stage of your life?
Challenges. It's a great question. I mean, as any first-year associate, right, a lot of it's confidence. Am I doing this right? You're not really getting much, at least I didn't feel as though I was getting a lot of feedback. And maybe because I was doing it right, they didn't feel the need to give me a lot of feedback on some of the things. Other things, obviously, the complex commercial litigation, I got a lot of feedback on. And my mentor was very articulate in the way in which he argued that I just was always mesmerized by. I loved going to court with him and just listening to him argue emotion. It was great. So,
that's awesome.
But it's confidence, I think. I think that's hard for any young person, is getting the confidence to do your job and do your job right.
Yeah. Do you think that maybe that lends to like a little bit of imposter syndrome?
Sure. Definitely. I mean, we all have that, don't we, at some point in time?
I try to combat it with delusional levels of confidence, just like telling myself that I am more than capable and prepared. I also like psychotically over-prepare for things, just to the point where I think of every possible argument that could come. Of course, that's not great for my mental health, but
But you are well
But
prepared.
I'm prepared, so that's what matters.
I mean, and look at you. You're successful because of it.
Yeah, thank you. And
Absolutely.
I've had a fun career, and I definitely think that confidence is key. You're very right that is definitely an early stage challenge that I see a lot of attorneys have, especially now litigating all over the state. I see it in different opposing counsels, like kind of the newer associates. You can see that they're not quite there. And maybe that comes from just you need to be thrown into the fire and get it, or maybe they need to get more feedback, because I'm sure that if you had received more feedback in the other things, maybe that would have helped lend to confidence. Because it's easy to assume that the reason they weren't telling you anything is because you were doing it right. But it doesn't mean that you don't want to hear it, you know?
Right.
It confirms for you, right? So at what point did you open your own firm?
2017. So I'd been practicing for 7 years, I think. That's about right. 6 years. Is that it?
So you opened your own firm and you were doing estate planning and probate and real estate.
And a little bit of real estate, yep.
Okay.
Because I'd done all the real estate in the past, I understood, and I had learned how to do the title aspect too. So to kind of figure out which area I either liked or wanted to expand on, I did open a title company as well. So
What's a title company?
Great question. So whenever someone is buying a piece of property and getting title insurance, which is typically required in Florida when you have a loan, so anybody that's getting a mortgage on property needs to have title insurance. It is the company that kind of takes the money from the buyer and makes sure all the seller's documents and the chain of title on the property is clear, meaning there's no clouds, no contested ownership issues or anything like that, and transacts. They're the middleman. They do the title insurance, they record the deeds, make sure all the numbers are correct, tell the buyer how much money to bring to the table, all the checks and balances essentially.
Okay.
Make sure everyone's paid, everything's going the way.
So you manage that business as well as your law firm?
I did.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So chain of title, when we talk about that, we mean that like I have a property, I have a home, and there's a deed that says my name on it, right? But before that, it said someone else's. So a chain of title exactly is what? Like how would I explain that to a non-lawyer?
Sure. And it's exactly as it sounds, right? So you own the property now, but before you, it was person Z and then person Y and person X. And all of those people had previous deeds, but they may have also had and that's the chain of title. Title is ownership, right? So
Okay.
that's the chain, the different owners. But between those owners, there might be loans and mortgages. There might be satisfactions of those mortgages, refinances, liens of different sorts, whether it's the city or a homeowners association. So there's
Or
various
contractor
things.
maybe?
Yeah, mechanics lien, all sorts of things.
Okay.
So those are the checks that the title company would look at to verify that all of those things have been paid, they've been satisfied, they're taken care of, so that through the chain of title, the new owner takes no issue with the property.
Okay, that's great. And are you still doing that work?
Very little. Very little. We kind of focus the firm on litigation as of late, so
Okay.
doing less title work now.
Do you miss it?
Sometimes.
It sounds like a lot of work, to be honest.
It
to
is
go
a lot
through
of work.
a whole bunch of prior owners and make sure that no one messed up and that everything's paid off.
Sometimes there's shortcuts. If there was a prior title policy with the same company that you write with, you can, check the gaps, and it's a little not as onerous, but sometimes you get crazy things. I've litigated crazy things, like a title insurance company missed a life estate. And so somebody sold the property to someone else, but there was still a person who had a lifetime interest in it. And the new owner had no idea and was trying to evict them. And it's like, you can't evict them.
They own it, not you.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you get all sorts of weird things if somebody's not paying attention.
So is that where the title insurance comes in, that person would like essentially get a refund for their purchase?
It depends on, obviously, the terms. It depends on various factors, but that should be included in why you would get insurance, right?
Okay.
To protect against oopsie daisies.
Oh, yeah, for sure. That's actually horrifying.
It was a multiplex. So,
Yeah.
it was one of those things with a lot of different units, and this one guy still owned it.
So you opened your own firm in 2017. Leading up to that, and you mentioned you had a mentor that you adored. What's the best advice that you got and early associate, having been practicing for 0 to 6 years at that point?
The best advice, that's a great question. When thinking about best advice in general for business, it's actually not from an attorney. And
That's okay.
yeah, I mean, for an attorney perspective, though,
What's the best advice you've gotten from a non-attorney?
well, because a business owner, right? And that's
Yeah.
really what I think of my business as. It's less of a practice of a law versus running a business. And it's to have a proven market and a proven product. So obviously in law, the proven product is an estate plan. Proven product is, the practice of law and the ability to practice the law and things like that. Market, South Florida, I mean, it's kind of a win-win.
I think that's really important, actually, because aside from the fact that we're both lawyers, we are business owners, but business owners who listen to this can take heed of that, right? Like have a proven product and a proven market, which I think really ultimately comes down to know what it is that's your product or what you're selling and who you're selling it to. Because I do see that with business owners and then also with lawyers. Lawyers that are trying to do what I call door law, and they're just trying to do everything that comes through the door, right? You're never going to give 100% to anybody doing that. But the same with business owners. You have to know what your product is and who is going to be the ideal market for that, or you're just going to be wasting time and energy and money really trying to get it out there.
Exactly.
So that is excellent advice. What's the best piece of advice that you would give to younger lawyers who are climbing up the ladder?
Who are already climbing up the ladder, not thinking of going to law school?
Oh, yeah, different question.
I know. I mean, I think your point of being prepared is so important. That has always been a linchpin, is being prepared. And you can always tell who's prepared and who's not prepared.
Yep.
You can always tell. I mean, I'm guilty of not being prepared sometimes. But again, as a business owner, when you do so many different things, sometimes things slip between the cracks. It could be taxes. It could have been looking at a secondary argument that you weren't anticipating because it wasn't in the motion, but should have and knew you should have.
Yeah, that does happen sometimes. And even though judges are like, you can't make arguments that aren't noticed, like they do that stuff all the time, or they bring it up themselves.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So definitely being prepared is key. Okay. I can appreciate that. What's the favorite thing that you have about your practice? Like, is there one or more things that is your favorite when you think about it?
My favorite thing. That's a good question. Freedom. I think it's the freedom. And that comes with a lot of hard work, and it's less freedom than it sounds, but it's there at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's kind of hard to articulate. I think it's the freedom of being bossed around, maybe.
Yeah.
The freedom to be able to have a family if I wanted, to spend time with my family if I wanted,
To travel and work from the beach if you wanted.
Yeah. A lot of it. There's a lot of freedom. I mean, it's not as free as being, an employee at a firm, but it's a different kind of freedom.
Right.
I feel like when you leave a job, you leave the job mentally.
For sure.
But, the freedom that we have, I think, is very different because you don't leave the job. It's always with you because you are the job.
You are. Yeah. You are the product at the end of the day as a lawyer.
Exactly.
So I think that plays into something that I've talked about previously. A friend of mine, he said, like, his biggest thing is always be working, right? Like, that's the best advice he gives. But it doesn't have to be that you're grinding and like churning out paperwork. It can be working on your business. It can be working on you as the product and getting better and like taking courses or CLEs or whatever it looks like. But I think that you're right. There's so much freedom in working for yourself because even though we give up the security, because when you work for someone else, you have this guaranteed paycheck, right? But when you work for yourself, you have to make sure that like things are coming through the door or you're not getting paid, right? And even if you have clients coming in, you got to make sure they're paying you, right? In order to make sure the money is in the account. And, with that, there's a higher level of risk. There's less security, but there's a freedom because I can work from anywhere and I can work whenever I want versus like being told when I have to, what cases I have to take and all of that. Mm-hmm. So I think freedom is definitely a key part, I think, of owning your own business.
Well, it's my favorite part.
Do you have a favorite memory about your career so far?
Oh, that's a really good question. I do. And it's kind of one of those interesting happenstance situations. We took a case earlier this year. It was about 30-ish days. We had known about it for 60 days, but we didn't get retained until about 30 days before trial. And it had been a case that had been going on for 6 years, give or take. And I mean, it was crazy that we were going to just take it on as trial counsel and, we didn't do anything previously. So for those next few weeks, I was going through everything and learning everything I possibly could about the facts and what went happened and all of these different things. And in the case, 10-day jury trial, my first boss, the first firm that I ever worked for, had been mentioned in the case because he represented a party at an earlier point in time. The last boss that I had at the last firm I worked for had done, I think, the mediation or some sort of, pre-trial situation there. So I thought that was just the wildest thing. And then we come in full steam ahead and took on a 10-day jury trial and got judgment for our client. So it was pretty interesting as far as taking a step back and looking at my career and saying, wow, I guess this is where I am right now. And what does that mean?
Yeah, but I think that's an awesome favorite memory because you kind of get to see the fruition of all of your work, and see how far you've come. I think that especially as women, we tend to just kind of put this idea on ourselves that's expected, that we're not celebrating how far we've come. So I think that the fact that you were almost forced to see how far you've come, right? I think that's awesome. So sort of switching gears, have you ever dealt with anything that was scary? What's the scariest moment that you've experienced as a lawyer or a business owner?
As a lawyer or a business owner, scary. So coming from a person who doesn't really get scared, and that's a whole separate and aside thing. Nervous, yes. Scared, different question. Well, as a female and a more petite female, I mean, I'm under 5'5", so I'd call that petite. We won a case and a defendant who was the plaintiff, strike that. Yeah, a plaintiff we beat in a case and they had to pay our attorney's fees. And it was a different kind of case, landlord-tenant situation. And the plaintiff came and dropped off monthly payments at our office every month, every single month. And I know that doesn't sound scary, but being a person who has always been overly protective of oneself by happenstance and taking into consideration you live in a city. I lived by myself as a single woman for a very long time. Safety is important. You hear a lot of scary stories. And so having somebody have to come and pay our firm a lot of money every month, I was a little concerned because money is hard for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And in a bad situation, people have done worse for less.
For sure. And even if it's not that particular person was struggling to pay, even
you never know.
But
and
you
I
don't
didn't.
know,
and
right?
I didn't know them. And it was.
I think that's fair for anything, though. There's a level of fear that I don't think a lot of outsiders can understand when you're a woman in a contentious practice, right? We're in this contentious situation, and there's definitely plenty of stories, unfortunately, about attorneys being attacked and murdered. For much less. For much less. Not even money related, just disagreements, And I definitely see that level of concern for physical safety because you don't know these people. You don't know if he's having a bad day. He may be salty about it and just snaps. You don't know.
You don't know.
And so there's definitely a level of fear of that, for sure.
So I think so far something along those lines is usually the scariest for me because again, you never know, and somebody could be off their meds. Not that I said,
right.
I know nothing about this person personally, whether they were or weren't, but that's the point though.
Right. You don't know these people, so you don't know what's going on. And I think that's so common and pervasive just generally, especially in, even more contentious areas of law, certainly like criminal defense and family law, there's definitely even a heightened concern. But I think anyone who is in an adversary process has to have that fear or like awareness at least, right?
Exactly.
Because I think that being a lawyer is the hardest job, hands down. I get that neurosurgeons have to be on their feet for a long time, but there's no one in the
Totally.
surgical operating room trying to swat the scalpel out of their hand, There's no one trying to like get in their head and tell them they're doing it wrong, right? In our job, we deal with every single day. Someone goes to work and their whole mission is to stop me from doing my job, is to stop you from doing your job. And, the clients that we represent in these very contentious battles can often feed into that narrative too and just believe that you're the devil on the other side and you're the worst, right? And how dare you not see my side? And so, yeah, I think that's a very well-grounded fear to have about people showing up and you don't know who they are, and especially when they have to pay you money.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about the problems that people are coming you to solve with respect to the death portion of your dirt and death. But what about with real estate? What kind of problems do people come to you to solve?
Well, it does tie into probate and estate planning too. We get a lot of partition cases for real estate.
What's a partition?
So a lot of times we'll get a group of people who inherited a piece of property and a group of people who may not know each other because they're distant cousins or anything along those lines. And of course, there's going to be a disagreement. Somebody wants to keep it. Somebody wants their money and sell it. A partition is a forced sale, so to speak.
Okay.
So somebody can buy you out, but it's going to have to go to sale and everybody's going to get their money eventually. So a partition is one. We do quiet title, which when there is an unknown interest in a piece of property, that can come in a lot of different forms. We draft a lot of documents, so seller financing, notes and mortgages, contracts for sale. Oh my goodness, so many different things. Option to lease. If you are renting a property, it depends. Is it commercial? Is it residential?
But you do both kinds, like commercial and residential?
Mm-hmm, we do.
So I think we touched on this a little bit, but I want to ask it a little more clearly. Like, as a business owner, what are some of the difficulties or early challenges that presented themselves?
Early challenges are different than continuing challenges.
Okay.
So as a business owner, my early challenge was the accounting portion. I know how to do numbers, but for taxes and expenses, how is it supposed to look in your books? And I had asked an accountant early on, hey, I just started this business. How should I create my books so that I can put certain things in whatever buckets they go into? And then when I give it to you at the end of the year, it's easy to do my taxes. That didn't work out the first time or the second time.
Same, unfortunately.
So I think that having your foundation in place before you open a business is probably a good piece of advice. And when I say the foundation, whether you need your operating agreements, whether you need your, CFO or CPA or accountant, whoever is going to be helping you with that stuff, have your foundation in place so that it's easier as you go through and do your Friday reconciles or whatever it is.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's also a good note is to be on top of that weekly, if not monthly, because I relaunched this year and I was just like flying by the seat of my pants trying to handle things for clients that were active and ongoing. And I didn't touch that part of the business. And then I had to spend like 2 days going through a couple of months worth of stuff. And it just was such a nightmare.
Yep.
But yeah, I definitely agree with you. That portion is very key because ultimately that's the money portion.
That's the money portion. It's the most important
What
portion.
are you doing if you're not going to get the money?
Exactly.
What about continuing challenges? What are some continuing challenges that you face?
I think it's always been people. People are pro and con in both assets. Either you have somebody who's an absolute rock star and a complete asset and you wish you could pay them more, or again, there's always a overpromise, underdeliver issue, and then things start falling between the cracks.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are scared to say, hey, I'm overwhelmed. Hey, I'm not getting to this. Hey, I need help. And I think a people problem is the biggest problem, because even if it's how do I deal with these clients? How do I deal with these calls? Or how do I do scheduling? It's just there's always something with the people. And it could be employees, but it's just.
No, you're right. And I've seen those challenges as well because I have a legal assistant now. I've went through a couple before that, and it seemed like there is almost this fear of asking the question, which for me, I'm very upfront about. Ask the questions. There's no stupid questions. Ask everything.
Everything.
If you're still asking me the same question after 2 months, then I think we have a comprehension problem. But don't be afraid to ask the question, because you're here to help this business run. And if you don't know what you're doing or don't know how it should be done, it's not helping anything, right?
Right. And if you're not helping to make the business grow, how are you going to grow? And I
Right.
think it's a team, and it goes back to that whole community thing.
Right.
What does a community look like? People who work together for a common solution.
Yeah.
And that comes with employees too. If you work at a business and you are getting a paycheck every month or biweekly, that's the word. You're getting a check biweekly. I mean, you should be helping, not just collecting a paycheck. Because
Right.
if you want to stay there and you like the environment, it just makes sense to me to help, not hinder.
Right. There should be a level of buy-in, right? Just because you don't own the business, like if you actually enjoy it or like your boss and want to see the business grow, especially when there are incentives to be had, I think that there needs to be some level of that. You need to have some skin in the game for sure. But I do think that tends to be a challenge, especially in this post-COVID era that we're in, where people do want to be more remote the way it was in COVID. But I think there are certain positions and experience levels that just don't lend to that. There was a time where I worked for a big firm and we had associates that were very green, and working from home was not good for them. They weren't learning and they weren't tracking time and they weren't working. There was a lot of them not being accessible when they should be, when it's business hours and I'm sending you an email or I'm trying to call you and there's crickets. And I understand that with email, and if you're a busy litigator, maybe in a hearing and you can't get to it, but I know you may not be able to get to it right away, but I should be hearing from you within a couple hours.
Yeah.
So when I send in an email at 9 a.m. and I don't have a answer by 4 p.m., I'm a little concerned here.
That's a problem.
So I definitely think there's a lot of that balance too. And I think work from home culture really cultivated a lot of that freedom that we talked about earlier. But I feel very strongly that you have to earn a certain level of that, right? Nobody just gives it to you. You have to earn it.
I definitely believe in that. There is a sense of entitlement that I think is part of a problem.
Yeah.
And it's a cyclical problem now. And to your point, since COVID, I mean, I moved to Fort Lauderdale as a remote employee because the employer that I had trusted me to get the work done and do what I had to do to be prepared for I was doing 20 hearings a day, maybe more, 4 days a week, not including trials.
Yeah.
I mean, they trusted me to get it done and be there and do it right.
And you demonstrated that you could, right? If you wouldn't have been given that option if you hadn't demonstrated that. And I was in a similar position because when I went to this big law firm, it was 2021. So I had already been working from home for a while with the COVID restrictions. But at a new firm, and especially now being over a year later, they were in the office. They had returned to the office. And I was able to ultimately negotiate into a work from home situation 4 days a week because I had demonstrated for a couple months that I put the money, where it's supposed to be, right? I deliver. If I say I'm going to get it done, it's going to get done. But yeah, I definitely think that that's a struggle that a lot of business owners probably face, and not having the buy-in and I don't know where the entitlement culture is coming from, but I know it's being cultivated and it's not helping anybody.
No, it's not. And it's not helping the younger generations either because you think that you deserve something, but then if you're not working for it, how does that work? Whereas everyone else, at least our age and older, I can't speak for people younger than me or people,
Sure.
But we worked really hard. I think
Absolutely.
I've had a job since I was 15.
Yeah, same.
Chores before that.
Yeah, same. I started babysitting at 14 and then I started an office job at 16.
Yeah.
I was just like a little mail clerk, file clerk type situation, but
$5.25 an hour if you were lucky.
Yeah. Yeah. And my mom was like, "Oh, you want a cell phone? I guess you need to get a job."
Yeah, and pay for it.
Yeah. That's true. All right. So why are lawyers important for dirt and death?
Oh, I mean,
Because if we look at what's available online, there's various websites that are like trust and wills available here for flat fee of $100, right? Or real estate attorneys don't seem to necessarily be as prominent in real estate transactions. You know, real estate agents are like, hey, you got me. I'll get you the contract. Like everything will be fine, right? I have seen the parts of that are not fine.
And it comes down to a lot of not fines a lot of times.
Yeah.
That's why lawyers have jobs. I mean, we're doing, at least trying. We have a few issues, quiet title and a trespass. One, a client purchased a property, beautiful backyard, fenced in, sprinkler system. They added a shed. All of these things, has owned it individually for 15 years. The previous owner bought it the same way, had it for 10 plus years. And come to find out, half that backyard doesn't belong to that property owner.
Oh my God.
It's in next door neighbors and nobody knew. So what do? There's a statute for it, but the realtor didn't look at the survey.
And the real estate attorney would have done that or should have done that, right?
Should have done that.
A good one like you will do that.
Shouldn't.
Yes.
They didn't do it. It is what it is. But now they're trying to maintain their backyard because that property might be sold and they might build a multiplex on it. So it goes from one type of use to a completely different one.
Okay,
in your backyard.
Yeah. So let's talk about what are like maybe the top 3 things that someone should know going into a real estate deal from the perspective of a real estate attorney.
Oh, wow. Going into a real estate deal, make sure due diligence is done, and that includes surveys. I mean, I mentioned the trespass issue, property lines. You need to know where your property line is. You need to know if there's any encroachments, and if there's any encroachments, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to just let it go? Are you going to file a suit right away? Are you going to get it remedied? So definitely due diligence. Let's see, clear title. I mean, you want to make sure there's no issues. Yes, there are third parties that go through and do it. But like I mentioned before, I mean, people miss things if they don't actually read the deed.
Right.
And if you read the deed, there's sentences and languages in there that change what the title means.
Right, like that life estate that you mentioned.
Yeah, you don't necessarily see it if you don't read in the paragraphs. And it's all fine print. Lawyers will always have a job as long as there's fine print.
Okay, so we've got do your due diligence, clear your title.
Yeah, and real estate transaction. Let's see what else. Know your deadlines. Those contracts, they're written, and I mean, oh my goodness, the contract. If it's not a FAR bar contract, the Florida Bar, Florida Realtor Association contract, you need an attorney. I mean, even with a FAR bar contract, I've seen
the FAR bar contract is the standard one that most people would know.
That a realtor would give you.
Yeah, okay.
If you have a realtor hand you a contract, it should be a FAR bar contract. However, I have seen those doctored in a way where it looks like it's FAR bar and it's not.
Oof.
Is a realtor going to catch it? I don't know.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, it could be anything. There's all sorts of issues that can arise, but the contracts, the terms and the deadlines, those are important.
Yeah. So it sounds like having a lawyer for the real estate transactions, commercial or residential, is like an insurance policy, because that sounds like a very expensive headache if you don't have clear title.
Oh, well, with the title insurance, they'll get it, but, it's still an issue.
Yeah.
And other things can arise.
So if someone's got an issue, I mean, like the life estate situation, I mean, they had to give back the property.
Essentially, they had to let them live there.
Wow.
Pursuant to the life estate. So, the tenant would have to pay for the necessary, I think it was taxes, maintenance, utilities. As long as they paid that until their death, they were entitled to that property.
Wow. Okay. I'm like having a little anxiety now. Think about future real estate transactions.
Just read your deed, the fine print.
And call you, and that's your job. And what about with respect to like estate planning and probate? What are the top 3 things people should know?
Estate planning as a whole, know how your accounts are labeled. There's a lot of things that can be done where you can avoid probate and also may not have to necessarily pay for a trust. Beneficiaries on accounts are great to have if you trust. Having a second person on account, again, same thing, as long as you trust. You can really dictate how your future family will be able to grow, I think is my favorite part about the estate planning and probate aspects. I was talking to my best friend before I walked in here today, and I was going through, different topics that we might cross. And I was telling her about the estate planning aspects and, oh, well, when you want to start spending your money, this is how you do it. She's like, that's what rich people do. I was like, yes, honey, that is what rich people do. That's what we're trying to do, help you become wealthy.
Yeah, so I think that's actually a really important part of this conversation is that the estate planning and the dirt and death, like, yes, it does have to do with death, but it's also with life because you help people structure their assets in a way that they can be beneficial to them during their lifetime as well, not just after the fact.
Right. You can definitely build wealth with estate planning. I mean, in whatever regard, if you have extra money to spend and you want to invest somewhere, how do you do it and how do you plug it into your estate plan so it can continue for your benefit as you get older and your family's benefit when you're gone?
So let me ask you a question that I see come up probably a decent amount. I'm in a lot of mom groups, and you see this idea that gets floated around of, oh, if you want to get your money protected and like keep the IRS out of it, you just get a trust, right? And then you just use your money through the trust. This is a very, very like basic way people are explaining it, but I don't believe that that's actually how it works. So you tell us, what is that concept and how correct or incorrect are people who are without experience talking about it?
So we'll say 50-50, right? Yes, it's great to put your assets into a trust because it gives it a level of liability protection if done properly. Because if done incorrectly, you could be subject to creditors. As far as the IRS and taxes, you still have to file taxes. So yeah, your money might be named differently, but as an individual, you're still going to have to pay taxes on your income. If you own businesses and the trust owns businesses, it's going to have to be taxed in the business. So hiding it from the IRS in whole, maybe not. In part, definitely, to an extent. We still have federal limits. There's still accountability. When somebody passes with a trust, everything is appraised. Everything gets a number added to it. And then you look at the total pot and what's there. And then things move accordingly. So it really just depends on where in the bracket you fall for income and how much assets you have.
So the idea that I could just have a trust and like put all my money in it and then have the trust pay my bills, is that a real thing or
Absolutely. Yeah. So Danielle has a trust and she put an investment account that the trust owns. So that account is now owned by your trust. And maybe that account is paying your mortgage because you have enough income coming from it every month. You can just have it auto debit and pay your mortgage. That's 1000% what it can do. And guess what? It's your trust that does it. It's not Danielle Dudai individually.
Yeah.
It's her trust.
Does it have to be a different type of trust than what we talked about in terms of for death, or is it the same thing?
There's different kinds of trusts. So it
Okay.
depends on facts and situation and intent. So most people, when they're young and working and able, do what's called a revocable trust. They can change it at any time, whether it's successor trustees or beneficiaries or terms of the trust. Maybe you had a falling out with somebody or you had a new baby. Those are usually revocable trusts. You can change them. Irrevocable trusts are often used for the elderly to help them protect assets from Medicaid, Medicare, things along those lines. They can also be used for children. You want to set up an irrevocable trust that your kid can't touch, and it has to be pursuant to the terms of that trust. Then that's one great way to do it. Irrevocable trusts for children.
So that would be something that can't be changed.
Correct.
Okay.
When you say can't, everything can be done.
Of course. So I mean, like, not in the same way that the revocable trust, but if you wanted to change it, you would essentially have to like unwind it and then do something different.
So it depends on who's doing it.
Okay.
So the intended beneficiary of an irrevocable trust cannot change it. But whoever created it, there are ways that they can change it.
Interesting. Okay.
Because usually an irrevocable trust doesn't benefit the settler or the person who created it. It's usually for someone else, usually.
So I wouldn't create that for myself
You
then.
could. Depends on the circumstance and situation.
So I could create a trust for the benefit of myself, but I wouldn't be able to run it. I'd have to have
Correct.
something. Okay.
Correct. Somebody else would have to be your trustee.
Okay. Kind of like to checks and balances.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. So what do you think is like one of the hardest things about your job?
The hardest thing, as the practice or as a business owner?
Let's talk about both. Let's start with the practice.
Okay. As the practice, probably collections. You know, people want your services, but they don't want to pay.
True.
You know, and I think that my altruistic nature of wanting to help people has a hard time also asking to get paid for them for the services that I've provided. We've had to hire a third party because it's just easier. It gets done faster. I don't even have to think about it. You know, pay your bills.
I definitely think that's a really hard part of the job. Like, I think it leads into another question I have about a common misconception about your job. For me, the answer is always that like lawyers don't need to get paid or that they can do things for free. There are certain types of lawyers, like personal injury lawyers, that get paid on contingency. So, which means, you know, they get a portion of whatever the settlement is or the outcome or the judgment. But most lawyers don't operate on that, you know? So when I've gotten calls and I've explained my fee structure, people are like, but like someone else is going to pay you. Like when this resolves, I'm like, but you don't have an issue where there's going to be a big payout. So no. And I also don't work that way. And I definitely think that's tough. And I hear you on like because you have always been someone that just like wants to help people and you have such a giving heart. But it's tough because at the end of the day, you're not some robotic lawyer that belongs to some huge national firm that gets a paycheck regardless of what happens in the firm. You own a business and you have your own things. You're also not just a business owner and a lawyer, you're a person, you know, you're someone's girlfriend, someone's friend, someone's auntie. You know, you have a life outside those office doors.
Do I? I didn't. Do I?
It might be missing right now. She might be a little bit lost in space right now, but yeah. So I hear you. That's definitely tough. So collections is the hardest part as an attorney, but what about as a business owner?
It's probably the same as a business owner. I mean, you know, clients can be hit or miss.
For sure.
You know, I've had to fire my fair share.
That's my next question. Have you ever fired a client?
Yes, absolutely. You know, and I think it goes back to that whole like, oh, that's my attorney. And so I had this one client and very successful person, you know, had a great real estate portfolio, a bunch of doors, rentals, things like that. And she would throw emails at me at different times a day, multiple times a day with different cases that she wanted me to work on with not a lot of input as to what it was and when I was supposed to start things. And I think we had something like 7 or 8 active cases and they were all emergencies. And then I would bill her and she was like, that's so expensive. And I was like underbilling. And it was to the point where she didn't want to pay me for all of this emergency work. And I was like, all right, I can't do this anymore. So I'm done.
Right.
I wish you good luck in all success, but it won't be at my expense.
Right. I do see that as a pervasive problem. I've dealt with that issue too. You know, you get clients who want you to work all hours, turn things around next day, tomorrow, whatever, but they're not willing to pay for your time to do that.
Right.
And good lawyers are busy, right? So the fact that you want a certain contract tomorrow does not mean you're getting it tomorrow. If you want it tomorrow, that means everything else that I have scheduled has to be put to the side. So that comes at a premium.
Yep.
And, you know, I include that language in my contracts, but when they're reminded of it, more often than not, they're like, you know what? It's not that urgent.
Yeah.
You know, I don't need to pay the 1.5x to get it done. But it's true. And it does. I've had to fire clients for similar issues like communications and boundary crossing, you know, the disrespect, you know, the idea that because you're paying the attorney, they work for you or they do what you say. That's not how it goes. That's not how it goes at my house. And I know that's not how it goes at your house. So
I'm sorry. This is my strategy. And if you don't give me all of the facts that I need to go forward and I learn something else down the road that is contrary to what I was told, that's it. I am a do not lie to me firm. You misrepresent your case and make me think that something happens that I learn later is false. I'm done. I will not take a case if my clients are lying to me, or I learn later I drop them.
What do you wish that more people understood about your job or what you do?
That there's not enough hours in the day to get things done for everyone who thinks that their issue is an emergency.
Fair. I think that's fair. How do you manage client expectations?
Oh, I'm very upfront with things. Court, first and foremost, is slow. As much as the Supreme Court wants it to be fast, it's not. I mean, people still need to get time to read things and respond and do things. I have investors calling for cases, and they're like, give us an update every single week. It's like the deadline for service hasn't even happened yet. I mean,
Yeah.
time. It takes time. And of course, it's expensive too. And people don't have the time, the money, or the patience a lot of times. And those are, I think, the three things that people need to understand. If you have to hire an attorney, expect it to take time, money, and patience.
Yeah, it does take a lot of that. I always talk to people about that because even though from a business perspective, it benefits me if someone wants to litigate, I still always talk to them about the resolution side of things up front that, especially like I have several clients who are employers and they have disputes with contractors. And I'm like, look, you may be right? And we have an excellent argument, but you're going to spend 5 times as much and we're not even going to get anywhere yet, right? You're just going to spend that in the first few months. Just make a settlement offer and it goes away. And now you have your time back. You can concentrate on your growth. Because litigation is not fast, even though the Supreme Court is trying to get these cases to be on rocket dockets. It's just not happening because litigators have a lot going on. You're always trying to schedule with another side, and you have to when's the witness available and the other attorneys, and sometimes attorneys pretend like they're not available.
Sometimes pretend.
So it's really difficult to deal with that. And, there's always the concept of like there's a sanction or a penalty if you're not cooperative, you're not doing what you're supposed to. But I don't find that a lot of judges wield that power properly.
They don't. They don't wield it properly, and they don't wield it enough, frankly.
Right.
When it needs to be done, they don't. And then when it doesn't need to be done, they do. And it's very counterintuitive a lot of times.
For sure. And there's a lot of bad lawyering that goes on, and in so many ways, but especially when a lawsuit is filed and there's issues with it, a motion to dismiss gets filed. By the time you can coordinate a hearing and then get a hearing on it and then hope that the other side fixes their pleading. And if they don't, then you're back there and here we go. It's been 4 months and we haven't even really started the case yet.
Yeah.
It's so frustrating for sure. I can see how that's something that a lot of non-lawyers don't really understand about the process, especially because TV shows make it seem the complete opposite, in Law and Order when these trials take a day. And I think I've had one case in my entire career take a whole day, So what is a hard lesson that you learned that has shaped you as a person?
That's a really good question. And it comes back down to people and perception of people. I have a tendency to see the good in people. I can always see someone's potential, danger zone, red flag. And that is personal and in business.
Yeah.
You want to see the good in somebody. You can see where they would fit into the perfect, employment position or whatever, and or a partner, or there's so many different ways that it's applicable. And yeah, that's been the hardest lesson for me, is picking the right people and understanding that just because I see the good in them doesn't mean that they are.
Right. Or that you see their potential, but maybe they're just not interested in living up to it.
Right.
Which is hard for people like you and I to understand because we're constantly trying to be better and grow, but not everyone's like that. And that's okay for their lives. But I have had a similar experience where I have to learn how to meet people where they are in order to adjust my own expectations of what's going to come out of that when dealing with people, whether it's an assistant, an associate, whatever it is. So it's definitely a hard lesson to learn. What would other lawyers be surprised to learn about you?
Let's see. That's a great question too. I think most people would be surprised to learn that I am a secret forest fairy.
Okay, what is that?
I love the smell of a bonfire in my hair, the sound of running water from a tent and to be barefoot like by my river. Be one with nature, so to speak.
Do you get to do that often?
No, I don't. I miss it. I don't get to do it a lot. But when I do, it's, what I really feel my best, I think. The worries literally wash away. I feel much more grounded, and there's different things that can help me feel that way. But I think being barefoot in my woods by my river is really where my heart's
at. That's just
at.
the top. All right. So if you could go back in time and give your younger self some advice or guidance, what would that be?
The confidence you have is enough, and everyone's faking it until they make it. So keep doing what you're doing because you're doing a damn good job, girl.
Oh, yeah, you are.
Yeah.
Which is the perfect lead in to my next question, which is what is the thing that makes you successful?
Success is an interesting word. It means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Some people it means, you've made a certain amount of money. Some people, they've achieved a certain goal. It goes back to the freedom aspect. And I think what I find makes me successful is my ability to be free.
How does that translate into your practice?
Boundaries. I've worked really hard on setting boundaries, being able to give myself the time to be free. And whatever that is, going to, take a stroll down the beach or, go for a scuba dive or book the trip, last minute. I'm very spontaneous.
Yes, you are. I think that's important though, because what makes you successful in showing up for your clients is the fact that you have that lower level of stress, right? That clarity and those ability to really look at the whole situation for that client from a 360 view. And you can't do that without setting boundaries and without giving yourself time to recharge. And I do find that sometimes I get not necessarily pushback, but maybe like a little bit of defiance from a client here or there because they're like, well, like my thing is more important than your thing. Right. And I'm like, well, first of all, mental note, when this is done, you're no longer my client because you need to respect this. I'm a person too. But also, your thing is not more important because my thing allows me to not just be free and like pick my hours, but really allows me to manage my own internal stress level so I can show up for you really strong. You don't want a lawyer that's burnt out because they're going to be high risk in terms of issues that they're missing because they're burnt out. And so their brain is literally not capable of seeing all of the possibilities for you.
Well, and I think that goes back to your earlier question, what is a part of your practice or a part of the job in this industry in general that we wish more people would know? Burnout is real when you are a business owner and a lawyer, because like you said, it is one of the harder jobs out there. And not to discredit any other jobs, but we literally take other people's problems and stress on and try to make it better.
Right. I often say that to my clients, like, you don't have to worry about this now. That's my job. You're literally paying me to make this my problem. But it does eat you up because you want to make sure. And I think especially lawyers like us who care about their clients, right? Like we care about the work product we put out. This is not some mill. This is not just churn and burn.
Well, maybe that's the trick of the trade is to just not care and churn and burn, but it's not within me. I think and I don't know if it's a female issue in general where we just care because the maternal instinct and things along that, maybe we're just coded for that. But I do find some of my male colleagues, they're just like, it's not that big of a deal. Why are you worried about it? And I'm like, give me a reason not to worry about it.
Right.
I love my law partner for that reason. He helps me be a little bit more balanced when I am too personally, involved, at least.
Yeah, I do think that men are just differently coded. They really are. I saw it a lot when I was a litigation paralegal before law school, and I worked for a criminal defense and family law firm. And I worked for women, and we would go to court, we would go to mediation with men, and I just felt like they were so much better at compartmentalizing things because I could see how these things would eat up the women I was working with after hours. And men were not having that issue. Like they were just on their next thing. They were talking about sports, talking about going fishing, whatever. And these women were like caught up on the thing that happened at 11 a.m. on Tuesday, right? 5 days ago. And I think that's just the way that we're built. We're just built different. But, it does require that much more work on our part to balance, right? And find that ability to navigate life, right? Which is a next question that I really have for you, which is like, how do you navigate the complexity of being a business owner, being an attorney, being a partner in a relationship? Like, how do you navigate life with all these different complexities being thrown at you?
I mean, you got to go with the flow. I mean, it's really what it is. You're cruising down a river and there's rapids or a curve or a rock or, a log in the way, and you got to roll with it. I mean, at the end of the day, we all need to be like water on a duck's back, because if you get caught up in the mundane, it could kill you. I mean, the cortisol levels and stress, it's known to cause cancer. I mean, we really do need to take a step back and, just take it as it is. Let the chips fall where they may. And I mean, not be so hard on ourselves, I think. As a business owner, you want to show up all the time, 100% all the time. And you can do that, but how is it going to be on the back end, right? The dark side of the moon, so to speak, that people aren't seeing. What does that look like at the end of the day? If you don't just go with the flow and let it just happen as it may. You can be as well prepared as you want. What do they say? A Boy Scout is always prepared.
Yeah.
Be prepared, but what are you going to do? You don't see a lot of it coming. Most of it you don't see coming, and that's part of life.
That's true. Although I think that the way that you've articulated that is a lot more chill than me and most people that I know. But I have learned, unfortunately, through hard life lessons that there are certain things you just can't control. And so my anxiety is a superpower when it comes to preparing for clients, because I think about every possible direction that something could go. But I've also had to learn that there are things that I cannot control. And so I can be prepared, but things may just happen and life happens, and you're just going to have to go with the flow, and you're just going to have to figure it out as you go along, because there's only so many moves that you can plan for, that's it. And you can't control those things. And so if you stress about the things you can't control, it will eat you alive and it will destroy your body. So,
oh, yeah. Consume you.
Yeah. So last question is, what is the story that you want told about you? What is it that you want clients and colleagues to remember you for? My brother used to say to me, 10 years from now, what's the story you want to tell your children? Right? So it's kind of the same concept.
Oh, my goodness. I don't think I ever really wanted to be defined by my work. I don't know if that is something that is just a Terra thing but to being defined by my work, I don't think that's what I really want to do. I want to be known for the help that I was able to provide, the fact that I do care, and I want what's best for the people that I care about. And usually my clients, I will tend to care about them. I get their life story. People tell me all the things, and I care. I want what's best for them and their families. And I think that at the end of the day is just what I want for everyone, is the best. And that's probably why I see the best in people.
So that's ultimately how you want to be remembered. I think you will be, because I think you're doing a really good job of being that person. And I can speak to that from experience, because you did my estate plan. So that was a really tough thing to navigate, because you are confronted with your own mortality, which is so not fun. But, to have someone like you that genuinely cares, and not just because we're friends, but because I know that's how you are. You've worked with other people I've referred you to. And, it gives a lot of comfort in that. And I think that will definitely be your legacy, as someone who listened, made you feel heard, and was present with you. Yeah.
Well, and helped. And, mortality is what we all have to face. And it's more about building your empire for the now, and your future for the later, than death when it comes.
Well, Terra, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for your honesty and your candor. It was so enlightening. Conversations like this, I think, have such an impact, not just among lawyers, but among business owners and just people trying to navigate life. And that's really what this podcast is about, trying to help people, right? So to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. And if you enjoyed the podcast, please give us a like, a subscribe. You can follow us on all our socials. It will be tagged below. I am Danielle Dudai. I am your host. I am the owner of Dudai Legal, a law firm that handles all matter of business transactions, contracts, and litigation. This has been Navigating Complexity. Thank you.